In this video, we're going to take a closer look at the gradle files. Remember, Gradle is a tool that is used to configure and build projects. And to accomplish this, Gradle uses multiple files. If you look at the project under the Android view, you'll see all the Gradle files grouped together under this Gradle scripts category. You'll notice that our project includes two build.gradle files. The first one, as you can see with the gray text, is the project file. And this contains top-level information that applies to the whole project. And the other build.gradle file, which has module written in gray, deals exclusively with the mobile app that we are building. But that begs the question, what's the distinction between project and module? Well, say we're building this weather app for both phones and smartwatches. In that case, we would be working with two separate modules within the same project. I'll show you exactly what I mean. If I go to File, New, Module, and choose to create an Android Wear module, and click Next, I'm going to call this module the Wear module, and go through the wizard. After Gradle finishes building the project, we can clearly see that the first module here is for our mobile app, and the second module here is for Android Wear. Now the project as a whole consists of two modules. The build.gradle file for the project has information that applies to all the modules. So it includes things like which version of the Gradle plugin we'd like to use. And the build.gradle file for the Wear module consists of instructions that are specific to building this particular module. Since I've now got two modules, I've got a build.gradle file for each of them, one for the Wear module and one for the mobile app. But for this tutorial, we're not interested in building an Android Wear app, so I'll remove this module again, which I can easily do under File, Project Structure, click on the module in question, and then hit that minus sign. So now we're left with a single module and one build.gradle file. In this file, we can see various bits of information. The minimum SDK version, the target SDK version, and the build tool version, amongst other things. Some of this information, in particular the minimum SDK version, should be familiar from the project wizard that we used to set up the first apps. So now we know that the Gradle build file is where this information is stored. One of the things about Android is that it has a big focus on forward compatibility for its apps. The goal is that existing apps that were built against older SDKs should not break when the user updates their phone to a newer version of the Android operating system. And the way that we as developers ensure that our app is only installed on phones where the app actually works properly is through the values of these two fields, min SDK version and target SDK version. The minimum SDK is the oldest version of the Android operating system that can run the app. In other words, the minimum SDK is like a lower bound. This piece of information is one of the signals that the Google Play Store uses to determine which devices an app can be installed on. That way, when you're browsing the Google Play Store on your phone, you're only seeing apps listed that you can actually run on your device. The value of the target SDK version is supposed to indicate that we have tested our app up to and including the version specified here. This is like a heads up that we're giving the Android operating system, which is running our app, on how it should handle our app in terms of looks and features. The key thing to understand about Android is that the operating system decides on how the app should look while the app is running, and based on the value of the target SDK version that is set here. For example, things like material design was first introduced in Android API level 21, so having the target SDK version set to 21 or greater means that our app can handle being styled in the material way by the operating system. We can actually get an idea of what our app would look like on older versions of Android in the theme editor. When we change the API level in the editor to something pre-material design, say API level 20, we can see that widgets like switches, the navigation bar, and the progress bar in the app would change. So the look and feel of the app will be different depending on what version of Android the phone is running. Now for practical purposes, we'll probably want to set the target SDK version to the latest released version of the API. This will ensure that our app will look as good as possible on the most recent Android devices. And the compile SDK version should be equal to the target SDK version. By setting this compile SDK version, we can tell Gradle what version of the Android SDK to compile our app with. And this means that we can use the Android API features included in that version of the Android API. So for example, if we wanted to make use of the split screen feature that was first introduced in Android Nougat or API level 25, then we have to set the compile SDK version to 25 or higher to make use of this within our app. Typically, you'd want to compile with the latest SDK anyhow. That way we can get all the benefits of the newest compilation checks on the existing code and be ready to use the newest Android features within our app.